Friends, in this video I'd like to discuss what happens when vested interests take over governments. The prime historical example is Easter Island. When the Polynesians first discovered Easter Island, it was a veritable paradise. They had everything they needed. They lived there very happily until they developed a social mania for erecting large stone heads all along their coastline. Nobody really knows why or what they represented, but it became an absolute mania, and to fulfill this mania there were quarrymen who formed a union. There were the stone carvers union. There was the tree cutters union. There was the log rollers union. Big problem was they had to move these large lumps of stone. You've no doubt seen pictures of them in National Geographic or other similar publications, to the coast, and they did that by rolling them over tree trunks. These unions, each representing a segment of the population and protecting its interests, continued to do this until all the large trees were cut down. And this, of course, eroded the soil, plus took away from them the possibility of building large offshore canoes like the ones they had arrived in. And therefore they lost the opportunity for offshore fishing, which they were deeply dependent upon. Soon the inshore fishery was depleted, the land was eroded, and eventually they fell into a terrible state of tribal warfare, cannibalism. When Captain Cook arrived there sometime in the 1700s, there was not a single animal alive on the island, not a mouse, and there were a few hundred degenerate survivors. I remember as a teenager reading about this and being incredulous that anybody could be so stupid as to cut down the last of their big trees. But in my lifetime, unfortunately, I have seen the power brokers of my generation be equally stupid about the mania of consumerism and continued growth, economic, industrial growth at any cost, to the point where today I see the planet dying under my feet. The air and water are polluted. I don't need to stress this point any further. All the so-called democracies of the world are under the control of the vested interests. Now I'd like to suggest a strategy by which just possibly true democracy, as I've outlined before, could be brought to the world. It's a simple strategy. Next time there is an election, occupy the entrances to the polling stations. Ask the people that come to vote, why would you support a system so heavily weighted in favor of the 1% who are the vested interests, at the expense of the 99% who are the rest of us and whose world is being destroyed before our very eyes? If less than 5% of the population were to vote, the professional politicians would never be able to stand up and say, we have a mandate, because they self-evidently would not. And I would hope that that would force them to have a serious dialogue with the people about alternate forms of government. One last thought. I'd like to suggest what I call the wisdom of the nomads. Every nomad knows that To be without is not good. Not to have enough, you go cold and hungry. To have too much, you are loaded down and therefore lose your ability to maneuver. You lose your very freedom. It seems to me, and every nomad knows this, enough is everything. Our mania today that we're destroying our world for, consumerism, so that everybody can be loaded down. Friends, enough is everything. My name is David Halevy. I live in British Columbia, Canada, and I thank you for watching.